Between June 12th and June 26th, a targeted bombardment hit Microsoft 365 environments. We're talking 81 million distinct login attempts in just 2 weeks. This was a password spray. Instead of trying a million different passwords on a single account, attackers take huge lists of old breached credentials from other websites and test them across thousands of different accounts, hoping someone reused a password. The standard defense against this is Multi-Factor Authentication, or MFA. You type in your password, and your phone prompts you for a code. Without that second factor, a stolen password is useless. This chart shows the timeline of actual account compromises during the attack. For the first week, the baseline stays low, just a trickle of a few breached accounts a day. But right here on June 22nd, the line spikes. In a single day, dozens of targeted organizations were breached. Look closely at the data making up that spike. A massive chunk of those breached accounts belong to organizations that actually had MFA turned on. This data confirms that even with MFA deployed, these organizations remained vulnerable. We have to look at the specific technical gaps these attackers used to walk right through these environments. Security researchers tracked those 81 million requests back to a specific range of IPv6 addresses. That range is owned by LSHIY LLC, an infrastructure provider with registered addresses in Hong Kong, Wuhan, and a New York shared office. The attackers rented out a Bring Your Own IP service from LSHY. This lets a user acquire a block of IP addresses and get routing services from an internet service provider, making it incredibly easy to blast out high volumes of traffic while hiding whoever is actually sitting at the keyboard. They also manipulated their digital location. Some telemetry tools tagged the incoming traffic as originating from China, while others read the exact same IPs as coming from Nebraska. This geographic ping-pong confuses automated security systems that look for strange travel patterns. But the attackers didn't point this traffic at the standard Microsoft 365 login portals used by billions of people. They completely avoided the most heavily monitored interfaces. Instead, they aimed their scripts at the Azure Command Line Interface, or CLI. This is a text-based tool usually reserved for developers and IT administrators to manage cloud resources behind the scenes. By hitting a developer interface rather than the standard user portal, the attackers stayed out of the spotlight. It provided a quiet channel that rarely triggers the security alerts most IT teams actively monitor. Inside the Azure CLI, the attackers exploited an older authorization method called ROPC, which stands for Resource Owner Password Credentials. When using the ROPC flow, it takes a username and password and immediately generates an access token. The flow never redirects the user to ask for a multi-factor authentication code. It's a deprecated protocol, and its outdated architecture simply cannot trigger interactive prompts. The attackers didn't hack the encryption, and they didn't clone anyone's phone. They found an old authorization pathway that quite literally did not know how to ask for an MFA code. Breached companies had conditional access policies, but made 4 mistakes. First, enforcing MFA only for specific apps, leaving Azure CLI unprotected. Second, applying MFA exclusively to admin accounts. Third, waiving MFA for trusted locations, which attackers spoofed. Finally, leaving policies in report-only mode. The MFA technology worked exactly as it was instructed to. The vulnerability here was human error in how those conditional access policies were written. Once security researchers identified the source of the traffic, they contacted LSHYI and reported the abuse. The infrastructure provider confirmed the user violated their terms of service and terminated the BYOIP account. Immediately after that intervention, the flood of 81 million login attempts flatlined to 0. But the end of this campaign doesn't close the vulnerability. If you manage Microsoft 365, you need to audit your conditional access policies today. You must configure your rules to require MFA unconditionally, applying it to all users, all cloud apps, and all client app types. No exceptions for standard employees, and no free passes for trusted locations. To permanently close this specific ROPC loophole, you need to enforce strong authentication at the client level. In Azure, you do that by enabling this specific setting, User Strong Auth Client Authentication Required. This explicitly blocks legacy authentication flows from bypassing your primary defenses. MFA is only as effective as the policy that enforces it. If your configuration fails to cover every possible authorization path, the security you think you have is non-existent.